Latest book project, which is in process, and how you do the research for it. Basically, I would characterize it as turning memoir into creative nonfiction, for lack of better, comparisons of genres. Can you tell us in detail what you're doing, what the book is about, how you go from memory to voice and all the business?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of note taking. There's a lot of carrying sheets of papers around that you may or may never use. But basically, there's a component where you have to kind of acclimate yourself to some medical terminology and be able to convey that in an artistic way.
And why is that?
Well, I think this is not I'm not writing for the AMA.
Right.
I'm writing creative nonfiction, which people want the story. They don't necessarily want a manual or some kind of formal document about traumatic brain injury.
So the story is about basically you got hit in the head, lost a certain number of hours out of your life, and are now going back and asking all kinds of questions about that.
Absolutely. Excuse me. The irony is, I may have lost 12, 13 hours, something like that. But I think as a human being, after I came through and realized that I was not going to have life-altering injuries indefinitely, that I was a better person for it in some ways. So that's kind of ironic if you think about it, that getting your head beaten in would somehow make you a better person. It's not to say that I deserved it, but I think it's given me a certain amount of introspection that maybe I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Really?
Absolutely.
Huh. Well, how does that work? I mean, the introspection is coming almost like exponentially, right? I mean, you're looking back at something and looking at that and then looking back at it again.
Yeah, well, it's like
you got to put yourself in the position you were in then, and then looking at it, then you got to evaluate it and try to turn it into something.
Sure, and we always have certain kind of biases when we look back on our past and we're like, well, this was this way. But we also have to be willing to kind of question the biases that we bring to that moment of, well, maybe I was that guy at 25, but maybe I was something else. Maybe I need to look at this differently to figure out, how that happened or who I was then, and it kind of informs who you are now.
That's really interesting. And medically it ties into a whole field of brain injury studies, which I've been, like you, interested in, but not, I'm not in med school or something. I can't read manuals, but I can certainly read pretty sophisticated articles, which the public also seems to be really interested in. Otherwise, these articles wouldn't be appearing.
Right.
But would you think that anyone who's been through a traumatic injury, especially to the head, would learn something about going back and looking at it in other terms than just I recovered physically?
Well, I think I'm lucky in the sense that my injury, notwithstanding any, subtle things that may be, askew, there are some people that have had some serious injuries that maybe they're wheelchair bound or something like that, and anything they could do to find meaning, the brain is very complex. So if you're willing to engage that complexity and kind of accept who you are, regardless of, maybe it's not who you want to be in some ways, the brain can help you do that, I think. If you're willing to kind of maybe think things through and just kind of understand the physiology. It's kind of abstract, but I think there's something to be said for understanding how the brain works to the extent that we can, and finding out how your brain works specifically. And that kind of will lead to further insight for you.
That's really interesting. So how long is this project going to take you?
I need to get my stuff together and spend a lot of time this summer really cranking out this material, and I'll be putting it together, and probably, hopefully December, I'll have a draft.
Well, that would be great, because I'd love to have you come back and talk about the draft and where you're going to go from there.
That'd be great.
Okay.